Some people are important, others just take up space, right, Mama? That's what my son Marcus said. My son lifted his glass in front of everyone, smiled, and dropped those words as if they were part of the toast, as if I wasn't sitting right there at the end of the long dining table, watching everyone laugh. It was his birthday, 42 years old. The house was packed. There was soft jazz playing in the background, red wine, plates covered with leftover food, and warm lights that made everything look perfect. Marcus stood tall in that pristine white shirt that probably cost more than $200, his watch gleaming on his wrist, and his wife Chloe standing beside him with that smile that never truly included me. I was sitting at the very end of the table, literally where they used to pile the empty serving dishes or the used napkins. No one had asked me where I wanted to sit. No one said a thing when I settled there because I already knew it was my place. Now my son cleared his throat. Everyone hushed. He raised his glass higher and repeated, looking directly at me. Because let's be honest, some people are important, others just take up space. And then they all laughed. It wasn't an awkward laugh. It was a real, shared laugh, as if everyone had been waiting for that moment, as if they all knew exactly who he was talking about. Chloe covered her mouth, but her eyes sparkled with amusement. The cousins nodded. Aunt Vivian lowered her gaze, but she smiled too. I didn't move. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even drop my gaze. I just stayed there with the wine glass in my hand, feeling the silence in my own throat weigh heavier than any comeback I could possibly deliver. I felt the heat rising up my neck, not from shame, but from rage, a cold, controlled rage, the kind that burns you inside but doesn't make you tremble, the kind that teaches you to wait for the exact moment. Marcus continued speaking. You gotta be real, right? There are people who add to the equation, and there are people who, well, you know. He shrugged. Everyone laughed again. Someone said, "Cheers," and glasses clinked. I stayed motionless, looking at him, remembering. I remembered when he was 5 years old and crying in the middle of the night with a fever. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up, putting cold compresses on his forehead, singing softly until he calmed down. We didn't have money for a doctor. We barely had enough to eat, but I was there. I remembered when he was 12 and got jumped at school. He came home with a black eye, his shirt ripped, crying with humiliation and anger. I held him. I told him he was strong, that he would get ahead, that it didn't matter what anyone else said, and that I would always have his back. I remembered when he was 17 and wanted to go to college. We had no money. I worked double shifts for 2 years to pay for his classes. I sold the jewelry my mother had left me. I sold furniture. I sold everything of value I owned except my dignity. That I saved until today. And now he was standing there in his $200 shirt, his watch worth more than 6 months' rent, in his huge house that I helped pay for with the first $1,000 I saved cleaning other people's homes, telling me in front of everyone that I just took up space. The laughter continued. Someone told a joke. Someone else asked for more wine. The music turned up a notch, and I stayed there at the end of the table, invisible but present, silent but wide awake. Then I took a deep breath. I placed my glass on the table. I stood up slowly, without making a sound, but everyone noticed. The laughter faded. Conversations stopped. Marcus looked at me, still smiling, but now with a flicker of surprise, as if he hadn't expected me to do anything at all. I spoke calmly, without shouting, without shaking. It's good that you mentioned that, Marcus, because you're right. Some people are important and others just take up space. He looked confused. Everyone was staring at me. No one moved. I continued, It's a good thing I just bought my own house 2,000 miles from here. I've signed, I've paid, and I already have the keys. The silence changed. It was no longer the silence of shared laughter. It was the silence of shock, confusion, and fear. Marcus opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Chloe stopped smiling. The cousins looked at each other. Aunt Vivian looked up. Don't worry, Marcus, I said. You won't ever have to put up with me taking up space in your life again. I'm leaving, and this time, it's for good. I grabbed my purse, turned around, and walked toward the door. No one stopped me. No one said anything. I only heard the sound of my own footsteps on the hardwood floor, and then the sound of the door closing behind me. It was cold outside, but I didn't feel a thing, just relief, just clarity, just the certainty that I had finally done what I should have done years ago. I got into the car, started the engine, and as I drove down those streets I knew by heart, the same streets where I raised the boy who now despised me, I realized something. I hadn't just taken up space. I had built the very space where he now lived, and it was time to build my own. I drove for 20 minutes aimlessly. The streets were empty. It was late. The light from the street lamps illuminated the pavement, still slick from the last rain. My hands were trembling on the wheel, not from fear, but from release, like letting go of something you've been carrying for so long that you no longer remember how it feels to live without the weight. I stopped in front of a park, the same park where I used to take Marcus when he was a kid, where I taught him to ride his bike, where he fell and scraped his knees, and I wiped away his tears, telling him that the pain would pass, but the courage to try again was what mattered. I turned off the engine. I stayed there in silence, watching the empty swing swaying in the wind. And then I cried, not from sadness, but from rage, from helplessness, from years accumulated of making myself small so others could feel big, from years of saying yes when I wanted to say no, from years of swallowing my words so as not to ruin the peace of a family that never gave me any peace. I cried all the tears I hadn't shed at that table, all the tears I hadn't shed when I sat at the end like an unwelcome guest in my own son's life. All the tears I hadn't shed when I heard that shared laughter, that laughter that erased me. But after the crying, something else came. Clarity. The same clarity I'd had 3 months ago when I made the most important decision of my life. The decision no one knew about. The decision I had just revealed at that table that changed everything in a second. Because I hadn't spoken on impulse. I hadn't said that because I was hurt and wanted to wound him back. I said it because it was true. 3 months ago, I started quietly planning my exit without telling anyone, without asking permission. 3 months ago, I received a call. It was Layla, my distant cousin, the one who lives in a small coastal town in South Carolina, 2,000 miles from the city that no longer felt like mine. She told me a neighbor was selling her house, a small 2-bedroom home with a front yard and a porch where you could watch the sunset. She sent me photos. I looked at those photos for hours. The house wasn't luxurious. It didn't have marble floors or huge windows like Marcus's house. But it had something I hadn't had in years. Peace, silence, space that was mine and no one else's. I asked her the price. She said the owner was asking $60,000. I had $42,000 saved. I had been saving for years, putting away every bill I could, every tip, every extra dollar I earned selling sweet potato pies on the weekends, doing alterations for neighbors. Jobs Marcus never knew about because he never asked what I did with my time. I told Layla I needed to think, but I really didn't need to. I had already decided. I just needed to gather the rest of the money. I sold the gold ring my mother gave me before she died. I sold the antique china I inherited from my grandmother. I sold old furniture I had stored in the back room of Marcus's house, the room where I slept, the room that was more of a storage unit than a bedroom. No one asked, no one noticed, because to them I was invisible. And for the first time in my life, that invisibility worked in my favor. In 2 months, I raised the $60,000. I called Layla and told her I wanted the house. She spoke with the owner. We signed papers. I did everything online, in silence at night when everyone was asleep, sitting at the kitchen table with the light off so no one would ask what I was doing. A week ago, I received the keys in the mail. I hid them in my purse. I touched them every day just to remind myself they were real, that it wasn't a dream, that I had a place to go. And today, when Marcus said what he said, when he humiliated me in front of everyone, when he confirmed what I already knew, that to him, I wasn't his mother, but a problem, a burden, something that took up space, I knew the time had come to speak, not out of revenge, but out of truth. I dried my tears and started the car again. I wasn't going back to that house. Not tonight, maybe never again. I drove to a small hotel downtown, a simple, clean place where no one knew me. I paid for one night, went up to the room, sat on the bed, and looked at my phone. I had 12 missed calls, all from Marcus. 3 messages from Chloe, 1 from Aunt Vivian. None of them said sorry. They all said, "We need to talk," or "This is a misunderstanding," or "You can't just leave like that." I turned off the phone, lay down, and for the first time in years, I slept without feeling like I owed anyone anything. The next morning I woke up early. The sun was streaming through the window. I showered, got dressed, and went down for breakfast. The coffee was hot, the bread was fresh, and I was alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. I turned on the phone, more calls, more messages. This time, even the cousins had written. Everyone wanted to know if it was true, if I was really leaving, if I had actually bought a house, if I was really going to abandon them. I only replied to one message, Layla's. I told her, "I'll be there in 3 days. Thank you for everything." Then I deleted the rest. I didn't block anyone. I just didn't respond because I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't owe them my time. I didn't owe them anything. I spent that day organizing my things. I didn't have much. My entire life fit into 4 boxes. Clothes, a few books, old photos I didn't look at anymore but couldn't throw away, a woven blanket I made years ago, and my grandmother's cross. That was all. I didn't have furniture because the furniture was Marcus's. I didn't have plates because the plates were from his house. I had nothing that was truly mine except those 4 boxes and the $60,000 I used to buy my freedom. I hired a small moving company. I told them to come the next day. I gave them the hotel address. I explained that it was only 4 boxes. The man looked at me strangely, but didn't ask. He just said, "Understood, ma'am. 8 a.m. tomorrow." That night, I slept in the hotel again. I turned off the phone again. I felt that strange peace again, that peace that hurts a little because you're leaving a whole life behind, but which also relieves you because you know that life was no longer yours. I thought about Marcus, the child he was, the man he became, and I wondered at what point I lost one and gained the other, at what point love turned into dependence, at what point my sacrifice became my prison. I didn't find answers. I only found more questions. But it didn't matter anymore because I had already made the decision, and this time no one was going to stop me. The next morning, as the sun was just coming up, I woke up with a knot in my stomach. It wasn't fear. It was something deeper. It was the feeling of closing a door that had been open for 67 years. The door to a life I built with my hands, my back, and my silence. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and looked out the window. The city was waking up, people walking to their jobs, cars, normal life, life that went on no matter what was happening inside me. I thought about that table, the table where they seated me at the end. I thought about the laughter, about Marcus's eyes when he said those words. There was no doubt in his gaze, no guilt, only certainty. The certainty of someone who knows they can say whatever they want because the other person won't do anything about it. But he was wrong. I got up, dressed slowly. Every movement was conscious. Every garment I put on was a decision. It wasn't just clothes. It was armor. It was preparation for what was coming. I went down to the hotel restaurant. I ordered black coffee and 2 slices of toast. The waitress was young, maybe 20, with her hair in a ponytail and a tired smile. She asked if I was visiting the city. I told her no, that I was leaving forever. She smiled wider and said, "How brave." I didn't know if she meant it or just said it out of courtesy, but I kept those words. How brave. Was it brave or was it cowardly? Was it brave to leave? Or would it have been braver to stay and fight? I didn't know. I only knew that I couldn't breathe in that house anymore, that every day I spent there made me smaller, that if I stayed 1 more year, I would disappear completely. I finished my breakfast and went back to the room. At exactly 8 a.m., The moving truck arrived. 2 young, polite men loaded my 4 boxes as if they were made of crystal, even though they were just old cardboard and things worthless to anyone but me. I gave them the address of my new house, 2,000 miles away. They told me it would take 4 days to arrive. I paid them half up front, $1,200. It hurt to spend that money, but it was necessary. I couldn't carry the boxes with me on the bus. Yes, a bus, because I didn't have a car. The car I drove that night was Marcus's. Everything was Marcus's. The house, the furniture, the car. Even the plate I ate from was his. I had nothing, and yet I now had everything. I had a house that was mine. I had keys that only I could use. I had a future that no one else was going to control. I went to the bus terminal. I bought a ticket for the next day, $530, a 2-day trip with 1 stop in the middle. I didn't care. I needed that time. I needed those hours of silence, of movement, of distance between who I was and who I was going to be. I returned to the hotel. I spent the rest of the day alone in the room. I stared at the ceiling. I counted the cracks in the paint. I listened to the sounds of the city through the window. Someone yelling, a car horn, distant laughter. Life. Life that wasn't mine, but that was there, reminding me that the world kept spinning. I turned on the phone. More messages, more calls. This time there was one from Marcus that said, "Mom, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't just leave like this. Come home. We'll fix this." Fix this, as if what happened were a technical problem, as if his words hadn't been real, as if I hadn't been sitting there at the end of the table watching everyone laugh at me. I didn't answer. I just put the phone away. I lay down, closed my eyes, and went back to that moment. I went back to that table. I heard his voice again. Some people are important, others just take up space. I saw everyone's faces again. Chloe with that hidden smile, the cousins nodding, Aunt Vivian, who didn't have the courage to defend me. And I wondered how many times it had happened before, how many times they had talked about me when I wasn't there, how many times they had said I was a burden, that I was the problem, that it would be better if I weren't around. Probably many times, probably for years. But that night was different. That night, they said it to my face. And that night, I answered. I got out of bed, went to the bathroom, washed my face with cold water, and looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 67-year-old woman, wrinkles around her eyes, gray hair, rough hands from so much work, slumped shoulders from carrying so many burdens. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw resolve. I saw someone who was still alive, who could still choose, who still had a voice, even if no one had listened to it for years. I went back to bed, grabbed my phone, and wrote a single message. Not for Marcus, but for myself. Just 3 words. Almost there now. I saved it in my notes. I didn't send it to anyone. It was just a reminder, an anchor, a promise. I couldn't sleep well that night. I woke up several times. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that table. I saw that raised glass. I saw that smile. I heard those laughs. But I also saw something else. I saw my new house. I saw the porch Layla showed me in the photos. I saw the small yard. I saw a place where no one was going to tell me I took up space, because that space was going to be mine. At 5 a.m., I was already awake. I showered, got dressed, went down to the front desk and paid the bill, $240 for 3 nights. I left the hotel with my bag slung over my shoulder and a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't joy. It was something in between. It was the weight of letting go. I walked to the bus terminal. The streets were still dark. There were a few vendors opening their stalls, a woman selling sweet rolls, a man arranging fruit. It smelled like fresh coffee, warm bread, morning. I reached the terminal, sat on a metal bench, and waited. I watched people pass, families traveling together, couples embracing, children running, and me alone. But I didn't feel lonely. I felt in transition, like when you're between 2 places and don't yet belong to either, but you know you'll arrive soon. The bus arrived at 7 a.m. I got on, found my window seat, row 12. I put my purse on my lap, settled in, and looked out the window. The bus pulled away, and as we left the city, as the streets I knew became smaller, more distant, more blurred, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt hope, small, fragile, but real. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I knew I was going to be, soon, very soon. The bus sped down the highway, and I looked out the window without really seeing anything. I just thought. I thought about how I had arrived here, how a woman who once had her own dreams ended up sitting at the end of a table, the butt of her own son's joke. I closed my eyes and went back, much further back. Marcus was born when I was 25. His father left when he was 6 months old. There was no goodbye, no explanation. Just one morning, I woke up and he was gone. He left a note on the kitchen table that said, "I can't handle this. Sorry." That was it. 27 words to end a life that was just beginning. I was left alone with a baby who cried every night, no money, no family nearby, nothing but my hands and the need to survive. I worked every job I could find. I cleaned houses. I washed other people's clothes. I babysat other women's children, while mine slept in a cardboard box I'd converted into a crib because I didn't have money to buy a real one. Marcus grew up seeing that. He grew up seeing his mother leave before dawn and return after dark. He grew up eating what I could buy with the coins I collected at the end of the week. He grew up wearing clothes that other mothers threw away, which I fixed with my hands to look new. But he never lacked love. He never lacked attention. Every night, no matter how tired I was, I sat with him. I read him stories. I sang him songs. I told him he was smart, he was strong, he was going to be someone important in life. And he was. He graduated from high school with good grades. He got into college thanks to the savings I accumulated for years. He studied business administration. He got a job at a big company. He started earning money. Good money. More money than I had seen in my entire life. At first, everything was fine. He invited me out to eat. He asked how I was. He bought me small things. Nothing luxurious, but things that meant he was thinking of me. I was proud. I thought all the sacrifice had been worth it, that my son had become a good man. But then he met Chloe Miller, a woman from a wealthy family, college-educated, with that air of superiority that is noticeable from the start. The first time I met her, she extended her hand to greet me, but she didn't look me in the eye. She looked at the old dress I was wearing. She looked at my rough hands. She looked at me the way you look at someone who isn't up to your standard. Marcus didn't notice, or he didn't want to notice. He was in love, or perhaps he was just in love with the idea of belonging to a world that had always been denied to him. The world of people with money, with important last names, with big houses and new cars. They got married 6 months later. The wedding was expensive, very expensive. 500 guests, a huge ballroom, imported flowers, French wine, a dress that cost more than $8,000. I helped pay. Not because he asked me directly, but because he dropped comments. "Mom, the wedding is so expensive. I don't know how we're going to cover everything." And I, as always, pulled out my savings, $3,000, all I had saved at the time. At the wedding, they seated me at a table in the back near the kitchen, far from the main table where Marcus was with Chloe and her parents. Someone told me it was because there wasn't enough space. I didn't say anything. I just smiled and ate in silence while I watched my son dance with his new wife, surrounded by people who had never cleaned a floor in their lives. After the wedding, things changed. Slowly, so slowly that I didn't realize it until it was too late. The calls became less frequent, the visits too. When I went to their house, there was always a reason why I couldn't stay long. "Mom, we have an important dinner." "Mom, today isn't a good day." "Mom, we're tired." Chloe stopped pretending she liked me. She started making small, sharp comments. "Eleanor, that blouse is really old now." "No, Eleanor, you should dye your gray hair." "Eleanor, don't you have anything else to do at your own place?" Always with a smile, always with that tone that made her words sound like advice, but which were really blows. Marcus didn't stop her. Sometimes he even laughed, as if it were funny, as if I were the joke. The years passed. Marcus prospered. He opened his own business. He bought a bigger house. He changed his car twice. He traveled to Europe, to Asia, to places I had only seen in old magazines. And I continued living in the same small apartment where I raised him, working, saving, hoping that one day my son would once again be the boy who hugged me and told me I was the best mom in the world. But that boy no longer existed, or maybe he never really existed. Maybe he was just an illusion, a projection of what I wanted him to be. 2 years ago, the owner of the apartment where I lived told me he was selling the building, that I had to leave. I panicked. I had nowhere to go. I didn't have enough money to rent another place. Prices had gone up too much. I called Marcus. I explained the situation. There was silence on the other end. Then he said, "Okay, Mom, you can come live with us, but only for a while, until you find something." I moved into their house, into the back room, the one they used as a storage unit. Chloe didn't say anything, but her face said everything. Every time she saw me, she frowned, as if my presence made her perfect home dirty. Marcus told me not to worry, that it was temporary, that I would find something soon. But months passed, and there were never any conversations about finding me a place. There was only silence and glances, and that constant feeling of being where I shouldn't be. I started to make myself invisible. I got up early so as not to be in the way in the kitchen. I ate quickly. I locked myself in my room. I went out little. I spoke less. I became a ghost in my own son's house. And then came that night, that birthday night, where everything exploded, where Marcus said out loud what everyone was thinking in silence, that I just took up space. But what he didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had been planning my exit for months, that every dollar I saved, every object I sold, every sacrifice I made was for this, for the moment when I could leave, for the moment when I could say, "Enough." And that moment came, and I seized it. I opened my eyes. The bus was still moving. Outside, the landscape had changed. There was no more city, only open country, trees, mountains in the distance, open sky. I took a deep breath. I took the keys out of my purse, touched them. Cold, real, mine. I smiled, because this time, the space I was going to occupy was going to be my own, and no one, absolutely no one, was going to tell me I didn't deserve to be there. The bus stopped at a rest area. It was noon. The sun was hot against the windows. People began to get off to stretch their legs, buy something to eat, or go to the restroom. I stayed seated a moment longer, looking out the window, thinking. I thought about the exact moment I decided to leave. It wasn't that birthday night. It was months earlier. It was an ordinary afternoon, nothing special, no big fights or hurtful words. It was simply the accumulated weight of hundreds of small humiliations that finally broke me. I was in the kitchen washing dishes. Chloe came in with her cell phone talking to someone. She didn't look at me. She never looked at me when she talked on the phone, as if I were part of the furniture. I heard what she was saying. "Yes, it's complicated. No, it's not that she's a bad person. It's just, she's older. She needs things, attention, space, and we have our lives. Marcus works so much, and I do too. We can't be looking after her all the time. Sometimes I feel like, well, it is what it is." She talked about me as if I weren't there, as if I didn't have ears, as if I weren't a human being with feelings, but a problem that needed to be solved. I kept washing the dishes. I didn't say anything, but something inside me broke. Or perhaps it didn't break, perhaps it woke up. That part of me that had been asleep for years, that part that once had dreams, plans, its own voice. That part that I sacrificed for my son, thinking that one day he would thank me for it. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling of the back room, listening to the sounds of the house. Marcus and Chloe laughing in the living room, the television on, their normal, happy lives, without the problem. And I asked myself, when was the last time I was happy? When was the last time I did something for myself? When was the last time someone asked me what I wanted, what I needed, what I dreamed about? I couldn't find an answer because so much time had passed that I no longer even remembered what it felt like to be the owner of my own life. The next morning, I started slowly, without announcing anything. I opened a new bank account, one that only I knew about. I started depositing every single penny I could save. I stopped buying unnecessary things for myself. I stopped spending money on gifts for Marcus and Chloe, which they never appreciated anyway. I saved everything. Every bill counted. Every coin was a step closer to my freedom. I started selling things. First, the easiest ones. Old clothes I didn't wear anymore, books I had read 1,000 times, small trinkets I kept out of nostalgia, but which no longer meant anything. I sold them online, at second-hand markets, in neighborhood Facebook groups. No one asked, no one noticed. Then I sold more important things: my mother's ring, my grandmother's china, old furniture I had stored. Every sale hurt because they were memories, they were pieces of my history, but at the same time, every sale brought me closer to my new life, and that hurt less than staying. Weeks passed, the money grew. $42,000 was more than I had ever had at once in my entire life. I felt powerful, in secret, in silence, but powerful. And then Layla called. My cousin, whom I hadn't seen in years, called because she had thought of me, because she knew I wasn't happy where I was, because mothers talk. And even though I had never told her anything directly, she knew. Women always know. She told me about the house. She sent me photos. And when I saw those images, something inside me said, "That is your house. That is your place. That is where you will be reborn." I didn't think twice. Well, I thought about it 1,000 times, but every time I thought about it, the answer was the same. Yes, I want that house. I want that life. I want that space that is mine. I spoke with Layla. We negotiated. The owner wanted $60,000. I had $42,000. I was missing $18,000. It seemed impossible, but I had done the impossible so many times in my life that I knew I could do it again. I sold more things, everything I had of value: an antique watch given to me by a lady I worked for years ago, a silver bracelet, a wooden chest of drawers I inherited from my aunt. I sold everything, without looking back, without regret. In 2 months, I reached $60,000. I called Layla. I told her I was ready. She spoke with the owner. We signed papers, all online, all in secret, all while I was still living in that house where no one truly saw me. Marcus never asked what I was doing at night. He never asked why I spent so much time in my room. He never asked anything, because to him, I wasn't doing anything interesting. I just existed. I just took up space. And while he was thinking that, I was buying my freedom, signing documents, transferring money, planning my escape. The keys arrived in the mail a week ago. I picked them up myself at the post office. I hid them in my purse. I touched them every night before sleeping, just to remind myself they were real, that it wasn't a dream, that I would soon be far away from there. There were difficult days when I thought maybe I was being selfish, that maybe I should try to talk to Marcus, explain how I felt, give him a chance to change. But then I remembered. I remembered the way he looked at me. I remembered Chloe's comments. I remembered the times they talked about me as if I weren't there. I remembered that I was no longer his mother. I was his burden. And burdens aren't listened to. They are only tolerated until you can get rid of them. I was going to get rid of them first. Not with violence, not with shouting, but with the most powerful decision a woman can make, the decision to leave. I got off the bus, walked to the small coffee shop at the station, and ordered a coffee and a sandwich. I sat at a table by the window. I ate slowly, watching people pass, families, couples, people alone like me, all with their own stories, their own pains, their own decisions. I took out my phone and turned it on. More messages. This time, one from Aunt Vivian that said, "Eleanor, please answer. Marcus is worried. We're all worried. This isn't right. You're his mother. You can't just leave like this." I read the message 3 times, and each time I got angrier, because no one was worried when they sat me at the end of the table. No one was worried when they treated me like I was invisible. No one was worried when I cried in silence all those nights in the back room. They were only worried now because I had left, because I took control, because I stopped being the submissive mother who accepted everything without saying a word. I didn't reply. I turned off the phone again. I finished my coffee. I returned to the bus. The trip continued. Hours and hours of highway, of changing landscapes, of small towns appearing and disappearing outside the window. And I sat there, feeling how every mile separated me from my past and brought me closer to my future. For the first time in years, I felt like I was doing something good for myself. Not for Marcus, not for Chloe, not for anyone else, but for me. Just for me. And that didn't make me selfish. It made me free. The bus reached the second rest stop as it was getting dark. We had been traveling almost all day. My body was tired, but my mind was more alert than ever. I got off to stretch my legs, bought a bottle of water, and sat down again. It was still several hours until we reached my final destination. I turned on the phone. I knew I shouldn't, but something inside me needed to see. I needed to know what was happening on the other side, what they were saying, what they were thinking, how they were reacting to my absence. I had 27 missed calls, 18 messages, all from Marcus, Chloe, Aunt Vivian, and the cousins. There was even one from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. It was from Jerome, Marcus's cousin who barely spoke to me at family gatherings. "Aunt Eleanor," it said, "is it true you left? Is the house thing true? Marcus is going crazy. He says it's a misunderstanding, that you didn't understand the toast, that you're overreacting, but I was there. I heard what he said, and I know you're not overreacting. I just wanted to tell you that." I read the message several times. It was the first one that didn't ask me to come back. The first one that didn't make me feel guilty. The first one that simply acknowledged that what happened had happened. I didn't reply, but I saved the message. Maybe one day I would thank him. Maybe not. But in that moment, I just needed to know that someone had seen the truth. Then I opened Marcus's message. It was long, too long. It said things like, "Mom, please, we need to talk. This is ridiculous. You can't make decisions like this without consulting me. You are my mother. You have responsibilities. Family problems are solved by talking, not running away." Every word hit me, but not like before. Before, I would have felt guilty. I would have questioned myself. I would have convinced myself that maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was my fault. Maybe I should go back and apologize. But not now. Now, I saw the words for what they were: manipulation, control, the desperate attempt of someone who lost power and wants to get it back. Because that's what I represented to Marcus. Power, control, someone who was always there, someone who always said yes, someone who never left. And now that I was gone, he didn't know how to handle it. There was one more message. This one was more recent. It said, "Mom, if you don't answer in the next few hours, I'm going to come look for you. I don't know where you are, but I will find you. You can't do this. Not to me, not after everything I've done for you." I read that last line 3 times. Everything I've done for you. As if letting me live in the back room of his house was a favor, as if tolerating me was an act of charity, as if I owed him something. And I realized something. Marcus truly believed that. He really thought he had done me a favor, that he had saved me, that I was indebted to him. He never stopped to think about everything I did for him, the years I worked nonstop to feed him, the nights I didn't sleep because he was sick, the money I spent on his education, his wedding, his life, the sacrifices I made without asking for anything in return. To him, none of that counted, because that was what mothers did. It was my obligation, my duty. It wasn't love. It wasn't sacrifice. It was just what was expected of me. But letting me live in his house, that was a favor. That deserved eternal gratitude. I turned off the phone. This time, I did it with rage, with that rage that comes from years of being invisible, from years of giving without receiving, from years of being treated as less than I was. The bus started again. Night had completely fallen. Outside, everything was dark. You could only see the lights of some towns in the distance. Inside the bus, most people were sleeping. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking. I kept remembering. I remembered the first time Marcus told me I was a burden. Not in those exact words, but close. It was a year ago. We were in the kitchen. I was preparing dinner. He came home from work stressed, tired. Chloe wasn't there. He sat at the table and said, "Mom, I need to talk." My heart stopped. I knew it wasn't going to be good. I sat down across from him. I waited. "Look," he said, without looking me in the eye, "I know it's been difficult for you to be here. And believe me, it's been difficult for us too. It's not that we don't love you. It's just that Chloe and I need our space. And lately, I feel like I don't know how to say this without it sounding bad." "Say it," I told him, because I already knew what was coming. "I feel like your presence here is affecting our relationship. Chloe complains. She says she doesn't have privacy, that she can't do things the way she wants in her own house. And I don't know what to do. You're my mother. I'm not going to kick you out, but I also can't sacrifice my marriage for you." Sacrifice his marriage for me, as if I were the problem, as if I were there by choice, as if he hadn't been the one who offered to let me stay when I had nowhere to go. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. I got up, went back to the stove, finished cooking, and served dinner. We ate in silence. And after that night, something changed. Or maybe nothing changed. Maybe what had always been there just became more visible. I started noticing more things. The way Chloe sighed when I entered a room, the way Marcus avoided introducing me when his friends came over, the way they both spoke in low voices when they thought I wasn't nearby. Once, I overheard them. They were in their room. I was walking down the hall. Chloe was saying, "I don't know how much longer I can take this, Marcus. She's your mother. I get it. But this can't be forever. We need to look for something for her. A residency, a small apartment, something." "I know," Marcus replied. "I know. Give me time. I'll fix it." Fix it. As if I were a problem that needed a solution, as if I were a math equation and not his mother. I kept walking. I didn't say anything. But that night, lying in the back room, I decided I wasn't going to wait for them to fix me. I was going to fix myself. And I started. I started saving with more intensity. I started looking for options. I started planning my exit in silence, because if I had learned anything in that house, it was that my words had no value. Only my actions did. The bus took a sharp turn and pulled me out of my thoughts. I looked out the window. We were entering a small town. There was a lit-up gas station, an open store, a few houses with their lights on. Simple life, quiet life, the life that would soon be mine. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to feel something I hadn't felt in years. I allowed myself to feel pride. Pride in myself, in my strength, in my decision, in my courage. Because leaving wasn't cowardice. Leaving was bravery. It was choosing myself for the first time in my life. It was saying enough. It was taking back my voice, my space, my dignity, and no one, absolutely no one, was going to take that from me. The bus reached its final destination at noon on the second day. I got off with my bag over my shoulder, my legs stiff, my body tired, but my spirit strangely light. The station was small, almost empty. There were a couple of cabs waiting outside. I took one and gave the driver the address Layla had sent me. The driver was an older man, maybe 70, with completely white hair and a kind smile. He asked if I was new to the town. I told him yes, that I had just bought a house. He congratulated me. He said it was a good place to live, quiet, safe, where people still greeted each other on the streets. As we drove through the town streets, I looked out the window. Everything was different. The houses were small, painted in light colors. There were trees on every corner. Some people walked slowly, without rushing. There was a square downtown with an old fountain and wooden benches. Everything felt paused, as if time moved slower. "Here we are," he said. "My house." I still couldn't believe it. It was exactly like the photos. A small single-story house with cream-colored walls and a wooden door. There was a front yard, a little neglected, with tall grass and some wildflowers, and a porch. A porch with 2 old chairs and a small table. I paid the driver $30, gave him a $5 tip. He thanked me and left. I stood in front of the house with my bag in my hand, looking at what was now mine. I took out the keys, the same keys I had touched every night for a week. I put them in the lock. I turned. The door opened. I walked in slowly. The inside was empty, completely empty. There was no furniture, no curtains, only white walls, wooden floors, and the musty smell of a house that hadn't been lived in for months. I walked through every room. The living room, the small kitchen with an old but functional stove, the bathroom with white tiles and a tub that needed cleaning, the 2 bedrooms, one larger than the other, both with windows that overlooked the backyard. I stood in the middle of the large room, the one that would be mine. I looked around. Emptiness, silence, peace, and I cried. But this time, not from sadness, from relief, from gratitude, from freedom. I sat on the floor, took out my phone, and turned it on. More messages, many more. But now, there was a different one. It was from Marcus. It said, "Mom, I know where you are. I talked to Layla. I'm coming there. We need to talk. This isn't over." I read the message twice. I felt a knot in my stomach. Not of fear, but of anticipation, because I knew this was going to happen. I knew Marcus wasn't going to let me go that easily, not because he loved me, but because he couldn't accept that I had made a decision without his permission. I called Layla. She answered on the second ring. "Eleanor, did you get there?" "Yes, I'm at the house. Thank you for everything, Layla. Truly." "You don't have to thank me. It's your house. You deserve it." "Hey, I have to tell you something. Marcus called me an hour ago. He was furious. He demanded that I tell him where you were. I tried not to tell him, but he threatened to come anyway to search the whole town. I don't know. I got scared. I gave him the address. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. It's okay. Sooner or later, he was going to find me. Better now. Are you sure? I can come over if you want, so you're not alone." "No, I need to do this alone, but thank you." I hung up, took a deep breath, and looked around. This house was mine. This space was mine, and no one, not even Marcus, was going to take that from me. 2 days passed. 2 days in which I cleaned the house from top to bottom, in which I bought the bare necessities: a mattress, 2 sheets, a pot, 2 plates, a glass. I didn't need more. For now, that was enough. I slept on the floor the first night, on the mattress the second. Both nights were the best I'd had in years, because the silence was mine, because no one was tolerating me, because I was in my own space. And then, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, I heard a car stop outside. I looked out the window. It was Marcus in his new black gleaming car. He got out. He looked at the house with a frown, as if he couldn't believe I would live there, as if it were impossible that I had bought something without his help. I took a deep breath, walked out to the porch, and stood in front of the door. I waited. Marcus walked toward me. He wasn't smiling. He had that expression he put on when he was angry, but trying to control himself. That expression he used in his business meetings when something didn't go his way. "Mom," he said. His voice was tense. "We need to talk." "Talk," I said. My voice was calm, cold. Nothing like the voice I used to use with him. The soft voice. The voice that always gave in. "What is this? What are you doing here? Did you buy this house? With what money?" "With my money. The money I saved for years. The money I earned working. The money that is mine." "You can't do this. You can't just leave without telling me, without talking to me. I'm your son." "I know. And I'm your mother, but apparently that didn't mean anything to you when you said what you said on your birthday." Marcus pressed his lips together. It was a comment, a joke. "You didn't mean it?" Everyone laughed, Marcus, everyone. And you too, looking right at me, knowing exactly what you were saying, knowing you were humiliating me. "You're overreacting. You always overreact to everything." No, I'm not overreacting. I'm tired. I'm tired of being invisible in your house, of being treated like a problem, of hearing you both talk about me as if I weren't there. Marcus took a step back. For the first time, I saw him uneasy, as if he hadn't expected me to say that, as if he thought I didn't know. I don't know what you're talking about, he said. Yes, you do. I know you talked to Chloe about putting me in a residency. I know you complained that I took up space. I know everything, Marcus, because even though to you I was invisible, my ears worked perfectly. He fell silent, staring at the floor, not knowing what to say. I came to find you, he finally said, because you're my mother, because things can be fixed, because we can talk. No, I'm not going back. You're going to live here? In this no-name town? In this old house, alone? Yes, I need peace, and I didn't have that with you. Marcus threw his hands up, frustrated, angry. I can't believe you're doing this after everything I did for you. And there it was again. That phrase, everything I did for you. Tell me, Marcus, I said, looking him straight in the eye. What exactly did you do for me? Let me live in the back room of your house? Tolerate me at your dinners? Allow me to exist in your life? Because that's not love, son. That's pity, and I don't need your pity. It's not pity. It's what? Obligation? Duty? Because that's not love either. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no reply, because he knew it was true. I gave you everything, I said. My voice trembled, not from weakness, but from contained strength. I gave you my youth, my health, my money, my life, and I never asked for anything in return. Just respect, just to be seen, just to be treated like your mother and not like a problem, and you couldn't even give me that. Mom, don't. No, not anymore. I'm no longer the mom who says yes to everything, who makes herself small so you can feel big, who accepts scraps of your attention. That mom stayed at that table on that birthday when you laughed at me. Marcus looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw something in his eyes I hadn't seen before. Real, deep guilt. But it was too late. You can leave now, I told him. Go back to your house, to your life. I'm going to be fine here, alone, in my own space. The space I bought with my own money. The space where no one is going to tell me I'm superfluous. Marcus didn't move for a moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if he finally understood that he had lost. Not his mother, but control over her. He turned around, walked to his car, got in, started the engine, and drove away. I stood on the porch, watching him disappear, feeling how every yard he put between us made me freer. Marcus's car vanished down the street. I waited until I couldn't even see the dust kicked up by his tires. Then I let out the air I had been holding. My hands were trembling, my legs too, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from power, from finally having said everything I had stored up for years. I went into the house, closed the door, leaned against it, and then I cried. I cried hard. I cried everything out. I cried for the mother I was, for the son I had, for the relationship we lost, for the years I wasted hoping things would change, for all the times I swallowed my words to maintain the peace. But I also cried out of relief, because I had finally said it. I had finally stood in front of him and shown him that I, too, had a voice, that I, too, had limits, that I, too, deserved respect. I wiped my tears, went to the kitchen, filled a glass with water, and drank it slowly. I looked out the window at the backyard. It was neglected, full of weeds, but it had potential. I could see flowers there. I could see a small vegetable patch. I could see myself sitting in a chair, reading a book, drinking coffee in peace. The following days were strange, quiet. I spent the time cleaning, organizing, buying what was necessary. A small table, 2 chairs, a few more pots, towels, sheets, simple curtains for the windows. Nothing luxurious, nothing expensive, just what was needed to live. Layla came to visit on the 4th day. She brought homemade food, freshly baked bread, coffee. We sat on the porch and talked. She asked how I was. I told her the truth, that I was scared but also at peace, that I didn't know what was going to happen, but that for the first time in years, I felt like I was living my own life. "Marcus came," I told her. "I know, I saw him drive through town. How was it?" "Hard but necessary." "Do you think he'll come back?" "I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But if he does, my answer will be the same." Layla nodded. She didn't say anything else. She just put her hand over mine. That simple gesture told me more than 1,000 words. It told me I wasn't alone, that I had someone on my side, that I had made the right decision. A week passed, then 2. Life began to take shape. I woke up early. I drank coffee on the porch, watching the sunrise. I slowly cleaned the yard, pulling out weeds, planting some flowers I bought at the town market. I wasn't in a hurry. I had all the time in the world. I met my neighbors. Mrs. Peterson, a 75-year-old woman who lived alone and made the best peach cobbler I had ever tasted. Mr. Wallace, a widower who devotedly tended his garden and always greeted me with a smile. Jasmine, a young single mother with 2 small children who worked at the town bakery. Everyone was kind. No one asked too many questions. No one judged. They just accepted me as if I had always been there. My phone still received messages, but fewer and fewer. Marcus wrote a few more times. Short, cold messages. "Hope you're doing well. Let me know if you need anything." Never "I'm sorry." Never an acknowledgement of what he had done. Just empty words that meant nothing. I stopped replying, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. The conversation had ended that afternoon on the porch. Everything else was just noise. Chloe also stopped writing. She disappeared from my life as easily as she had entered it, as if she had never meant anything, and she probably never did. Aunt Vivian was the only one who kept insisting. She called every week. She told me I had to forgive, that family was the most important thing, that I was being selfish, that a mother doesn't abandon her son. One day I let her talk. I listened to everything she had to say, and when she finished, I told her calmly, "Aunt, I didn't abandon my son. My son abandoned me years ago. I only finally accepted that reality." She didn't know how to respond. She hung up. She didn't call again, and that was fine, because I learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people you choose, the people who see you, the people who respect you, the people who make you feel that your existence matters. One afternoon, while I was watering the flowers I had planted, I heard an unfamiliar car stop outside my house. My heart raced for a moment, but when I saw who was getting out, I calmed down. It was a different car, older, smaller. A man I didn't know got out, about 50, tall, with dark hair and some gray. He looked at me and smiled. "Mrs. Eleanor Mayfield?" he asked. "Yes," I replied, confused. "My name is David Jones. I'm a lawyer. Your son hired me." My stomach tightened. "What for?" "To speak with you about the house, about your situation. He's worried. He believes you might not be in a condition to live alone, that perhaps you need assistance. A medical evaluation, perhaps." "Perhaps what?" I interrupted him. My voice was firm, cold. The lawyer looked down, uncomfortable. "Perhaps legal assistance to determine if you are fit to make decisions for yourself." I understood immediately. Marcus hadn't come looking for me because he loved me. He had come to evaluate me, to see if he could use my age, my loneliness, my decision to leave as proof that I wasn't mentally sound, as proof that he needed to make decisions for me. He wanted to take away my house, my freedom, my voice. "Tell my son," I said, looking the lawyer straight in the eye, "that I am 67 years old, not 77, not 97, 67, that I am perfectly healthy, that I bought this house with my own money, earned through my own work, that I signed legal documents, that I paid taxes, that everything is in order, and that if he tries anything, anything at all, I will hire my own lawyer and I will fight. Understood?" The lawyer nodded slowly. "Understood." "And also, tell him," I continued, "to stop sending intermediaries. If he has something to say to me, he should come himself. but he needs to be clear that my answer will not change. I will not return. I will not give in. I will not disappear just because he wants me to." The lawyer nodded again. He said goodbye. He left. I stood in the yard with the hose still in my hand, feeling the rage surge through my body. I couldn't believe Marcus had gone that far, that he was willing to use the law, to use my age, to use whatever was necessary to control me. But at the same time, I wasn't surprised, because that's what he had always done. Control me, decide for me, make me feel like I was nothing without him. But he was wrong. I was much more than he thought, and this time, I wasn't going to let him win. I went into the house. I searched online for lawyers in the town. I found one, a woman named Denise Carter. She had her office downtown. I called her. I explained the situation. She told me to come in the next day. I went. I told her everything: the house, the money, the documents, the visit from Marcus's lawyer. She listened in silence, taking notes, and finally told me, "You have nothing to worry about. Everything is in order. Your son has no legal right over you or your property. If he tries anything, we will stop him." I felt relief, but I also felt sadness, because it had come to this, having to hire a lawyer to defend myself against my own son. But I also felt determination, because if he wanted a war, he was going to get a war, and this time, I wasn't going to lose. 3 months passed since I arrived in this town. 3 months since I left behind the life I built for Marcus and started building a life for myself. And in these 3 months, I learned something I never thought I would learn at my age. I learned that it is never too late to start over. The house no longer looks like it did when I arrived. The yard is clean. The flowers I planted have grown: roses, daisies, sunflowers. Every morning I go out to the porch with my coffee and look at them. And they remind me that beautiful things take time, but they always grow if you nurture them. I found a job, not because I needed the money, but because I needed purpose. Mrs. Peterson recommended me at the town bakery. I work 3 days a week, baking bread, attending to customers. Nothing complicated, nothing stressful, just honest work that makes me feel useful. I earn $200 a week. It's not much, but it's mine. And with it, I buy what I need: food, seeds for the garden, a book once in a while. I don't need more. The neighbors became more than neighbors. They became family. Mrs. Peterson comes over every Sunday for coffee. We talk about everything: our lives, our children, our mistakes, our victories. She also has a son who doesn't call her, doesn't visit her, and only shows up when he needs something. She tells me that sometimes sons forget that their mothers have hearts too. Mr. Wallace taught me how to care for the garden. He gave me seeds. He showed me how to prune the roses, how to make the plants grow strong. He told me that gardens are like people. If you neglect them, they dry up, but if you take care of them, they flourish, no matter how long they have been abandoned. Jasmine, the young mother from the bakery, became something like the daughter I never had. She tells me her problems, her fears, her dreams. I listen to her. I give her advice when she asks for it. Sometimes I just hug her. Sometimes that's enough. Her children call me Grandma, not because I asked them to, but because that's how they see me. And when they said it for the first time, I cried, because Marcus never gave me grandchildren. He never gave me that opportunity. But life gave them to me in another way. Marcus never returned after sending the lawyer. He wrote a few more messages, cold, distant, never saying what he really thought, never admitting what he had done, just maintaining minimal communication, as if that fulfilled his duty as a son. I stopped replying, not because I was angry, but because there was nothing left to say. The conversation had ended that afternoon on the porch. Everything else was just noise. Chloe also stopped writing. She disappeared from my life as easily as she had entered it, as if she had never meant anything, and she probably never did. Aunt Vivian was the only one who kept pressing. She called me every week. She told me I had to forgive, that family was the most important thing, that I was being selfish, that a mother doesn't abandon her son. One day, I let her speak. I listened to everything she had to say, and when she finished, I told her calmly, "Aunt, I didn't abandon my son. My son abandoned me years ago. I only finally accepted that reality. She didn't know how to respond. She hung up. She didn't call again, and that was fine, because I learned that family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people you choose, the people who see you, the people who respect you, the people who make you feel that your existence matters. One afternoon, while I was watering the garden, I saw an unfamiliar car stop in front of my house. My heart raced for a moment, but when I saw who was getting out, I relaxed. It was Jerome, Marcus's cousin, the one who had sent me that message. He walked toward me with his hands in his pockets. He looked awkward, but also determined. "Aunt Eleanor," he said, "I hope I'm not bothering you." "You're not bothering me. What are you doing here?" I came to apologize for not saying anything that night, for staying quiet when Marcus said what he said, for being a coward. I looked at him. I saw sincerity in his eyes. I saw real remorse. "You don't have to apologize," I told him. "It wasn't your responsibility to defend me." "Yes, it was. You're my aunt, and what happened was wrong. We all knew it, but no one did anything, and that makes us accomplices." We sat on the porch. We talked for hours. He told me that after I left, there was a big fight in the family, that some were on my side, that others defended Marcus, that the family had divided. He told me Marcus kept insisting that I had overreacted, that I had been too dramatic, that I was being ridiculous, but that fewer and fewer people believed him. "People are starting to see who he really is," Jerome told me, "and they don't like what they see." I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that. I only felt sadness because Marcus was my son, and even though he had hurt me, even though he had humiliated me, even though he had tried to control me, a part of me still loved him. A part of me still remembered the boy he was, but that boy no longer existed, and I had to accept it. Jerome left before nightfall. He hugged me before he left. He told me that if I ever needed anything, to call him. I thanked him, knowing I probably never would, but appreciating the gesture all the same. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and my new life became my normal life. I no longer thought about Marcus every day. I no longer checked my phone expecting a message. I no longer felt that weight in my chest every time I remembered that night. I started sleeping better, eating better, laughing more, feeling like my body was mine again, that my time was mine, that my life was mine. One morning, as I was drinking coffee on the porch, I saw something on the ground. It was an envelope. Someone had left it there during the night. I picked it up. It had no return address, just my name written by hand. I opened it. Inside was a letter. It was from Marcus. "Mom," it said, "I don't know how to start. I've tried to write this letter 1,000 times. Every time I tear it up because I can't find the right words. But today, I decided that it doesn't matter if the words are right. It only matters that they are honest. You were right about everything. I treated you badly. I made you feel invisible. I made you feel like you didn't matter. And the worst part is that I did it consciously. I did it because it was easier, because accepting that I was hurting you meant having to change. And I didn't want to change. I wanted you to be the one to change, the one to adapt, the one to disappear. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to come back. I only hope you know that I regret it, and that I'm going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. I love you, even though I didn't know how to show it. Marcus. I read the letter 3 times. I felt many things: sadness, relief, rage, compassion, all at the same time. But I didn't feel the urge to return. I didn't feel the urge to forgive immediately, because apologies are important, but they don't erase the damage. They don't give back lost time. They don't heal wounds overnight. I saved the letter. Maybe one day I would respond. Maybe not. But for now, I just needed to keep living, keep healing, keep being me. I finished my coffee. I looked at the garden. The flowers sparkled in the morning sun. The birds were singing. The wind gently rustled the leaves. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt that I was exactly where I should be, doing exactly what I should be doing, being exactly who I should be, not in someone else's space, but in my own space. The space I bought with my sacrifice, my strength, and my decision to choose myself. And that space wasn't small. It wasn't insignificant. It wasn't something extra. It was mine. It was enough. It was everything. I got up, watered the flowers, greeted Mrs. Peterson, who was walking down the street, prepared breakfast, and opened the windows to let in the fresh air. And as I did all these simple things, I thought of something. I thought that perhaps this was the real victory. Not Marcus's letter, not the apology, but this quiet life, this peace that didn't need permission, this freedom that didn't depend on anyone else. I, Eleanor Mayfield, at 67 years old, had finally found my place. And I was never, ever going to let anyone tell me again that I just took up space, because now I knew the truth. I didn't take up space. I created space, and that space was sacred. You know, for most of my life, I believed love meant giving everything, your time, your strength, even your silence. But now I've learned something different. Love isn't about shrinking yourself so others can feel bigger. It's about standing tall, even if you stand alone. Sometimes walking away isn't losing. It's choosing peace over pain, freedom over fear. And that's what I finally did. If you agree with me and enjoyed my story, show it by sending a like. Let's see how many of us feel the same. I'm curious, what city and what time are you listening from? Write it in the comments. And if you'd like to support my journey, you can send me a small donation. Thank you for listening and sharing your precious time with me. For more life stories like this, check out other videos on my channel and subscribe. On the screen, you'll see 2 new stories I'm sure you'll love. Click one and start listening now. With love.